So, you want timed choice menus in Ren'Py? Well, go to Ren'Py timed choice menu at cuteshadow.itch.io. Once you're on the page, click Download Now. Take me to Downloads. Download. You should have finished downloading timed_choice.rpy. Remember where that's stored, as we'll need it later. Now, I'm going to create a new Ren'Py project. Of course, if you already have your own Ren'Py game, you can skip this text. We'll call this Choice or Timed Choice Demo. We'll use a 1080p resolution, but it doesn't really matter which one you pick. We'll just use the default colors. We'll create the new project. Okay, I've created a new project. I'm going to open this project in VS Code. Here is the game folder. I'm going to open the game folder. And remember where you downloaded that file from earlier. I'm going to put it in my game folder, like so. Now we are ready to use the timed choice screen. Let's go to the script.rpy. I'm going to create a menu. I'm going to have Eileen say, "Do you love me?" I'm going to have two choices, yes, and if you pick that, you're going to say, "I do love you," and you can also pick no. And if you pick that, you're going to say, "I don't feel that way." And then we're going to have the end, because that will be the end of the story. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to launch the game. I'm going to press start. There's our menu. If I click yes, I say, "I do love you." If I click no, I say, "I don't feel that way," and then the game ends. Now, I'm going to make this into a timed choice. First, I'm going to click here in between menu and the colon. I'm going to put a bracket and a close bracket. I'm going to write time equals, and I want this choice to last for 10 seconds. So I'm going to write 10 here. Then I'm going to write timeout equals, and then I'm going to write a label here. We'll call this left Eileen hanging, because we did not respond to her confession. Then I'm going to create this label. I'll just copy it from here. And what will happen here, Eileen will say, "Your silence tells me everything." Because if the player doesn't choose an option in the 10 seconds, it will jump to this label. And then I'm going to have the end, or the sad end. And then I'm going to return to finish the game. I'm going to hit save. Let's launch the game again. It should now be a timed choice, because if you remember, we dragged that timed_choice.rpy file into our game folder. That's this one over here. So let's check it out. Now there is a timer on this choice. Of course, we can click yes and no like previously, but if we decide to wait the 10 seconds and not do anything, well, let's see what happens. It says, Eileen says, your silence tells me everything, which, if you remember, is the label that we specified earlier on, where she says, your silence tells me everything. So, that's how you use the timed choice menu. That's it for the tutorial. But for the rest of the video, I will be talking about how this was made. So, let's see what's inside this timed underscore choice to RPY that makes all this magic work. First is an MIT license. I put this here to basically say, if your game crashes because of this code, please don't sue me. Then here's some information about the timed choice screen, and a link back to the page that we downloaded this file from. Here is an example of how to use it, but we've already done that, so we don't need to go over this. Then we have lots of variables that can change the behavior of this timed choice tool. Here we have a timed choice speed. This changes the speed at which the timer counts down. So, for example, your player might want to have a slower time for a more casual experience, so they can set this to 0.5, which would make the timer go half as fast. Here is time choice enabled. This turns the time choice on and off in case your player would prefer not to have time choices. Here we have time choice timeout alt message. This is when your player chooses to make this variable false by, for example, clicking on a text button that toggles this between true and false. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to save this. I'm going to delete my persistent data so that it resets it to what it's supposed to be. Now when I do the time choice, instead of a timer, we have, well, the message that you put there. So right now it's just ... And that will say, your silence tells me everything. So they are not locked behind content by choosing to not participate in time choices. There's the ... That could be anything. Here are some colors for the bar. Here's the under color. That's the background color of the bar and the bar filler color. You can set these to any hex value you like. I've just set them to the default GUI values that we made earlier when we made the game project files. This is the width of the timer. You can make it wider. I set it to half of the choice button width by default. And here's the choice timer bar height, which is, well, how tall it is. I've kept it quite thin at only 10 pixels. Here is a Python function. We'll get back to that later. Here we have the actual choice screen. This just replaces the old one in screens.rpy. Here's a style prefix so that we can make it look like the choice screen. When we launch this screen using the menu statement, this one over here, first it will store a value called time choice and call a function called timed underscore choice underscore has, and takes parameters time and timeout, which come from here. What does it do? Well, all this does is it checks that both of them are here. Remember, time is how long the timer will last, and timeout is the name of the label that Ren'Py will jump to once the time has run out. So all this does is, if you are missing one of them, it'll kindly send you a reminder that you need the other one as well. Or if you have both, then we're happy to return the true value, time choice. So once the screen is happy that this is a time for a time choice, and the player has time choices enabled, we're going to adjust our time by our speed variable that we saw earlier using this equation. Then it's going to set a flag called timer finish. It's going to start at false because we've just started. While that timer has not finished, we're going to have a timer. It's going to take the adjusted time that we calculated earlier on in seconds. What's it going to do? Once this timer is done, we're going to set timer finish to true. And when timer finish is true, we will jump to the timeout label. Here is our list of choices. We have a UV box that will place our items vertically on the screen. Here are our choices. That is the same as the old choice menu. So you'll have yes, no, and so on. At the end, we also add a button to represent what would happen if you run out of time, but you don't have choices enabled, time choices enabled, because we don't want to lock content behind that. And then below that is the timer visual, which is that little bar that counts down. We're using a screen so that we can keep things organized. Below is the visual for the screen. It takes the adjusted time, so that's the time you write down, augmented by the player's choice and how much speed they want it to last for. So if they want to slow it down or keep it original, that's fine. What's inside the screen? We have a fixed, which is just our rectangular area. It has a size of the choices we made earlier on, all the way at the top. Remember these variables, we have the height and the width. It just takes those. Gonna align it to the center of the rest of the choices. We're going to add our undercolor. That's the background. On top, we're going to add the fill color. And then we're going to make it do an animation. First, we're going to make sure that it stays in the middle. It's going to start off fully zoomed. And as the time goes down, we have this linear interpolation time. It will take the adjusted time. It will shrink to nothing. So let's see what that looks like again. Here it is. Here's our rectangle that slowly shrinks to nothingness. So, that's how it was made. But how could you change this visual to something else? Maybe you don't want a bar. Maybe you want something more like a clock. I'll show you how to do that. So, you can go to any art program. Of course, we'll need a clock. I'll just make a circle. It'll be about this big. Maybe that's too big. Maybe more like this. Let's pretend that's a clock. I also want a clock hand. Here's a pencil. I'm just going to draw a wiggly line. It's a fancy clock hand. I'll point it up like this. That will do. Gonna copy this. I'm gonna delete this from here. I'm gonna make this invisible. Oh, I can see my clock hand has been filled. I'm gonna turn that off. I'm gonna export our clock face. I'm gonna put it in my images folder of your Ren'Py project. I'm gonna take my clock hand. I don't want just my clock hand, I want the invisible part as well, so that it's placed correctly. I'm gonna export that as well into my images folder. Now I have my art assets. I'm gonna go back to code. I'm gonna delete everything. I'm gonna start again. Gonna create a fixed. What size should it be? I'll use the same dimensions as my clock. I can see it's about 340 pixels, so I'm just gonna do that. So I'm gonna write X size 341, Y size 341 because it's a square. Now I have a rectangular area to work in. I'm gonna add my clock face. I'm gonna add my clock hand. Let me save. Let's see what that looks like for a second. I'll close this. I'll close this. I do want timed choices to be enabled right now. So let's set that back to true. Of course, I'm doing this in code. Your player will have to click a button that you put in one of your menus. Gonna delete persistence so it updates properly, and then I'm gonna launch the project. There's my clock. As you can see, it just places it below everything else. But we cannot tell what the time is because it is currently not moving. I can see that the clock is a little bit too big. I'm gonna zoom this entire thing by about half to make it half as big. I'm also gonna center it in the middle. So I'm gonna do X align 0.5. Gonna save. Let's see what that looks like. Let me Shift R to auto reload. Zoom is not a keyword of the fixed statement. That is okay. I'm gonna write at transform here. I'm gonna put the zoom in there. Should work now. There we go. Now it's half as big. It's in the middle, but we cannot tell what the time is because it is currently not moving. Let's make it move. I want the clock hand to rotate. Here's a colon, indent. I'm gonna write at transform here as well. Colon, indent. I want it to rotate, and I want it to take the amount of time that you wrote earlier on. That's here, which is conveniently handed over to you using this variable. So I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna write linear for time interpolation. Gonna use that time in there. What it's gonna do, I want to rotate my clock hand by 360 degrees. So by the time it finishes doing a full revolution, a timer will have ended. I'm going to save. Let's see what this looks like. It is currently off-center. I'm going to say true center here, so that it centers itself. There we go. Now we have a clock that goes in a circular motion, and when it reaches its full rotation, the timer ends. So that is an example of how you can change the visual to how you like. So, enjoy your time and choice menus in Ren'Py.